Hello Figgy Fiends and Collectors, this is me, Daniel East 1000, back again with another Lord of the Rings Figgy review. Today we're going to be taking a look at
the big one.
A nine figure pack set. That's unheard of for today's standard, but that's exactly why we're finger blasting in the past with Toybiz. And well, we're going to be taking a look at the main cast of characters that were packaged quite beautifully in this deluxe gift pack.
Wow! This is ginormous!
This is going to be quite the review, I can assure you that. Because there's 9 figures that we've got to talk about here. And really, what an excellent way to get the main cast of characters, the main heroes of the Fellowship of the Ring, in one foul swoop. If I was a kid at Christmas with this under my Christmas tree, I would be buzzing my little nuts off. I'd love to see a return to form of this from other figgy creators. While it does seem like a blessing, it can be a curse, because naturally a lot of these figures are just the single carded versions. There's definitely a debate to be had there, and we'll probably discuss that a bit more in this review, but it's just worth bearing in mind for the opening purposes of this video. Now, I've got the pack in this maroon colour scheme, and as Toybiz back in the day released their figures in a plethora of variants and packaging styles. As we've seen, there's this maroon one, there's a green one, there's a blue one, there was also cloth cape variants. Some even included Peter Jackson, the director of the series, as a Hobbit. Nonetheless though, as always, we're going to take a look at the packaging, of which, as you can see here, there's this big window display box. Features all the characters, so you can get a good look at those and their accessories. All your favourite characters in one big box set. Oh, not only that, you also get the precious. Shut up! And there's also a map included with this apparently as well, so that's quite swanky. I mean, just initially, just for those little additions, there's some nice love and care there. So yeah, modern day companies, maybe take a leaf out of this book. Moving to the side though, you've got the Lord of the Rings logo, you've got a lovely silhouette picture of the Fellowship there. Also on the other side. And then on the back, you've got a bio on all the characters, some quotes from the film. Absolutely lovely, lovely stuff. As quite traditional with all these Lord of the Rings figures, they have got the sort of Middle-earth map styling imprinted on that coloration as well of the box. At the top, kind of interesting inclusion with having Saruman on the box there.
Shoot him! Stick an arrow in his gut!
He's not part of the Fellowship, but it's what it is. Why not have an antagonist? You got Frodo and Sam, Lord of the Rings, Deluxe gift set. At the very bottom, you got Lord of the Rings, and also a notation about the types of batteries you may need, which I imagine I'll probably have to replace, because given how old this set is. Nonetheless, loads of legal garb, but lots of lovely, lovely, janky Photoshop work gone into this, and I love it. I'm all for it. That's the packaging out of the way and done with. Let's take a look at the figures themselves.
9 companions. So be it. You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Where are we going?
So here we have all the figures out of the packaging. I don't know what some of you may be thinking. Dear God,
He's opened a vintage collectible.
Vintage. Mad to think that we're now at a point where 2003 is considered to be that far in the past that items like this can be considered to be vintage. But you know what I say, the toys, they're meant to be enjoyed. Let them breathe. Fully ready for all the judgment. Now, we will be taking a look at all the figures individually. As I did mention, and as the packaging states, this set comes with the One Ring.
You cannot hide.
My precious. the one ring, and it's on this very basic chain. Very cheap stuff, I do have to admit. The one ring is very plasticky, it's not metal. There's no engraving on it either. But it's a nice little role-playing item for the kiddies, and I suppose it'll look quite nice on your shelf as a little representative of the one ring. You also do get the map of Middle-earth, of which is a really nice inclusion. So it comes in this little baggie. We just take that out, and there's this very forks-aged paper. You've got this string that it's tied up in, which is really nice. So if we just loosen that out, we take a quick look of that. I kind of almost don't want to redo that, but we can easily reseal it. We just unravel it. So it's got this really nice textured paper to make it look aged and old. That's really awesome, actually. I'm really impressed with that. What a nice little inclusion, just to include these. Yeah, well, the one ring is a little bit cheap, a little bit tacky. The map is actually considerably well quality in terms of its paper stock. And of course, you've got the sort of fake black edging as if it's been burnt or frayed over the years. That's really, really nice. I like that. What a nice little inclusion. And they really didn't have to include this. You know, these are just two nice little bonus accessories. And I think it just really adds to the set quite well and quite nicely. So they're just the two little bonuses that you do get within this. Nice little role-playing items. But anyways, let's get into the figures themselves.
You're late.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
So here we have Gandalf the Grey, and he's very sticky.
No, stop it, Gandalf.
He's very, very sticky. Something that you do find with these figures, just because of how old they are, and the fact that some of them do have mechanisms. It's almost like the oil or the plastic residue that's used from the moulding kind of goes off over time, and it leaves this very weird residue. I've managed to clean most of it off, but this boy was extremely sticky out of the packaging. Nonetheless though, this is a fantastic Gandalf the Grey. You've of course got his hat there. Lovely head sculpt, I do have to say. Of which, again, for the time, this is a really good likeness for Ian McKellen. You've got this long sort of travelling robe or poncho. You've got his staff, of which actually has a really cool feature, and we'll get into that shortly. Just looking around the figure, really, really exquisite stuff. Of course, just looking underneath the travelling cloak, you've got his robes under there. Of course, his sword.
He wields the faux hammer, the beater.
It's a little bit warped, but a bit of hot water would probably straighten that out. But he does hold that quite nicely, and it is removable. There's no sheath to store it, which is kind of interesting. That is a miss on this figure. I'm pretty sure other figures of Gandalf do come with a sheath to store his sword, but that's fine. There's no real biggie to that. I love the paint application. Pretty basic stuff, but it's still quite effective. And of course, he does come with this staff, of which has a play feature. Now, I don't have batteries in this currently, so I don't know if it works at present, just because of how old this is, how long the original batteries have been in. So, future editing Dan, can we include the newly fitted batteries here? Jeez! I'd really like to know if it works, but it's there. Future Dan knows, but it is removable, and I think the system for this is absolutely terrific. So it basically attaches via these little plugs in the hand. So there's these metal sort of connectors that have some wire running through the hand itself to the battery compartment, of which is here. And then if we just take his robe off, I think there's some sort of system in here when you pull the lever down here on his back, and you lift the staff up, then the actual light on this will glow. So I wasn't too far off in terms of how that works. Effectively, pulling the trigger down, that doesn't switch the light on. No, what you need to do is simply bend the elbow, and that switches the light on. So there's something to do with the connector in there. Then obviously to just switch it off, you just pull it down. So yeah, the more you know. As you saw, you can remove his travelling cloak. That's really, really nice. His hat is removable as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. It doesn't really sit too well on the figure. It's very, very loose fitting. So when you're playing with it, it does have a bit of a liability to fall off. Although it will stay on quite nicely there. Additionally as well, he's got this little bag, of which I suppose you could maybe remove. It is loose on the figure. But that's all the accessories he comes with. And I think this is really great, and I can't think of any other accessories that they could include with him. In terms of his articulation, he does have some articulation in the head. I don't know if it's a swivel or a ball joint, but it's hindered just due to the fact of his hair and his beard as well. He's got ball jointed shoulders, although in terms of this arm, due to the mechanism, you can't really repose that, because I think that may distort some of the electronics within it, but you can move it in and out. There's just no real swivel movement other than when you raise this arm with the lever at the back. There's a hinge in the elbow. Granted, it doesn't go very far, but it gives you a bit of mobility there. There's a swivel in the wrist, although you can only do it to a certain point. It doesn't do the full 360, and again, that's due to the fact of the mechanism. He has, in this arm, a ball-jointed shoulder and a hinge in the elbow. Swivel in the wrist that does the 360. A swivel in the torso. He has swivel hips and a hinged knee. So that's all the articulation that this figure comes with. And, you know, this is pretty standard for the time. It could be a lot worse. I think you can get this guy in some okay poses, nothing too overly action orientated. But if you are just looking for a Gandalf that's going to sit nicely on your shelf, a nice representation of him, you can't go too wrong with this guy. He looks really, really cool. So we just pop his travelling poncho back on. Now, this was released single carded, and again, because it's Toybiz, they did do an assortment of packaging variants throughout the line. This is a really good figgy. It's a really good representation of Gandalf. Yes, it's a little bit dated now in terms of the articulation standpoint, but I think the feature, the play feature, is really, really cool. A really nice inclusion there. Something very different and very of its time. But yeah, that's Gandalf. I'm really, really impressed with this, particularly for the time that it was made. Yes, it does show its age, but it's still golden.
I will take the ring to Mordor.
So here we have the ring bearer himself, Frodo Baggins. And this is again, really, really great figgy. The likeness to Elijah Wood is there. It's not great, at least for today's standards, but for the time, that's not bad.
You are a beautiful man, a beautiful man.
Of course, he's got this blue cape, which is pre-moulded in this flowing fashion. Normally, I don't like that in a figgy because it can sort of throw off articulation and balance. It does sort of limit you in terms of posing. But I do kind of like it with this guy. It adds something a bit different. Don't know, just looks pretty neat. And so far I haven't had any issues with it causing any off balance with the figure. He's wearing his brown outfit because Frodo does have quite a few outfit changes throughout the series. Just looking a bit closer at his outfit, there's some really nice dry brushing and weathering going on there just to pick out some of those textures. Looks absolutely fantastic. There's some brown pants as well. You've got the sheath of the sword on his leg. And then of course his hobbit feet, which actually have hairs painted on. So, yeah. A very, very small figure. I think height-wise, it is a little bit oversized. Just a little bit. I do know throughout the Toybiz run, they did kind of sort of tweak on the scaling of the figures. So yeah, this is a pretty good representation of Frodo. In terms of his accessories, the cape can be removed, and there's a peg just situated underneath the Leaf of Lorien brooch. Not only that, he does come with Sting.
Yes, yeah. Made by the elves, you know. The blade glows blue when orcs are close.
And that's really nicely sculpted, and he holds that pretty damn well. And finally, the sheath can be removed from his leg, as that's attached via a peg and socket. It does have a bit of a tendency to fall out, so you might just want to watch out for that. But that's all the sort of accessories he really needs. Now, in terms of his articulation, he has a swivel head, although it does feel a bit like a ball joint, but again, it is quite limited. He has ball jointed shoulders, hinged elbows, swivel wrists, a swivel torso, swivel hips, although they don't really move too far on mine. They are quite tight. There's hinges in the knees, swivels in the ankles. So again, pretty basic articulation, but not too uncommon for the time. Now, this was repacked single carded in the line. This was the only variant that I could find. I think potentially figure was used with the Frodo and Sam with the boat multi-figure deluxe pack. So that's potentially another way that you could get this figure. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this guy. He's very, very nice. There's no play feature. So yeah, I really like him. I think it's a pretty solid figure, even for this day and age.
Hurry! Frodo and Sam have reached the eastern shore.
So here we have Legolas, a really, really fantastic representation of this character, I would say. I really like this figure, particularly because of the play feature of which is super fun. We'll get into that shortly. So as you can see, I've got him posed up with the bow and one of the arrows, and that's something I really loved about this figure line. The fact that they included separate arrows, just really, really cool. A nice inclusion with pretty much all their archer characters. And as you can see here with Legolas, you can really get him posed up quite well with that. Probably, dare I say, even better than some of the modern figures. I think that's mainly due to the fact that the bow has this plastic string. I'm not really sure what kind of material that is, but that looks absolutely fantastic, really authentic. Yeah, of course, you've got some of the overspill from that on the ends there, but in terms of how that works with the play feature, spot on. Really, really awesome. The head sculpt is also pretty good. Again, for the time, it's a relatively good likeness to Orlando Bloom. Just moving the accessories out of the way as well. You've got a really nice look at that body there. Really, really good sculpt. Of course, you've got the sort of strap for the arrow quiver. You've also got silver there for the armour and the engraving, that lovely detailing there as well, that elvish design on the forearms, just lovely, lovely stuff. And on his back you've got this sheath and arrow quiver, which is really nicely detailed and painted. That's solid on the figure, it is stuck on. Just really, really nice stuff. Then moving down to the legs, which have some nice sculpting, and a little bit of paintwork there as well. Nothing to really sing home about. He just looks really, really good. And like I said, the play feature is absolutely awesome. You can get this guy to fire arrows. So as you can see, I've got him posed up, but if you do take the arrow out and you do pull the actual string back, it will fire an arrow, which hopefully I can demonstrate here. Just really, really sweet. Now, the other play feature as well, pose Legolas like that, and then if you had an arrow in hand and you squeeze the legs, you would flick it out, ready to sort of redraw. Or alternatively, you can put the sword in his hand, though it's very, very loose. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but a sword slashing action with that as well. It's a bit janky, but yeah, you can do a bit of sword slashing action. Just really gimmicky, a little bit silly, but I think it's pretty cool. So just looking at the accessories, you've got his bow, which is really nicely engraved. You've got 3 of these arrows, of which do sit quite nicely in hand. And then finally, he does come with this single dagger. Now, the single release of this figure actually comes with 2 daggers. For some reason, this only comes with 1. It's not a biggie for me, but it can be stored in there, and then the other one would be stored this side. So there's multiple storage places for the daggers, but this version, like I said, it only just comes with the 1. But yeah, really, really good stuff. I can't think of what other accessories they could have given him other than maybe another dagger, at least within this set. In terms of his articulation, he has a ball jointed head. However, it is quite limited due to the hair and the sculpt of that. So you can't really pose it too much, but there's enough there to get him to look like he's aiming down through that arrow sight. Now, if I just take this apart and show this off a bit, because this is where it gets confusing. So naturally, because the gimmick is built into there, there's no articulation really in the top part of the shoulders, although his arm does bend like so, and there is a swivel in the wrist in this arm. In the other arm, there's a ball joint in the shoulder, hinge in the elbow, and a swivel wrist. He has swivel hips, at least in this leg. This one doesn't move because that's where the play feature is situated. He has hinged knees and hinged ankles, and that's the same with this leg as well. Really, really basic articulation, but it displays extremely well with the bow and arrow. I think the gimmick does add to the charm of this figure, but nonetheless, Legolas looks really, really good. I like him a lot. I think it's really just quite a charming figure. So, there you go.
Well, here's one dwarf you won't ensnare so easily. I have the eyes of a hawk and the ears of a fox. Oh.
The dwarf breathes so loud we could have shot him in the dark.
So here we have Gimli, played by the awesome John Rhys-Davies, and he is one of my favourite characters from Lord of the Rings. His banter with Legolas is just chef's kiss.
What's happening out there?
Shall I describe it to you? Or would you like me to find you a box?
If we just have a look at this figure though, I love this. It's not the best figure in the set, at least in terms of its articulation, but I really like it. Again, there's a charm with some of these figures that just can't be expressed until you get them in hand. And just looking at the detailing on his armour, on his outfit, is just absolutely remarkable. In terms of the texture or paint that they've put on just the lower part of his uniform, there's this weird sort of black patterning, almost like leopard print, just there. Another way to really describe it, but that's kind of interesting and looks really, really cool. Looking at his helmet as well, just absolutely brilliant. And the head sculpt again, not the best likeness, but for the time, it's pretty decent. Boots as well, even they're really nicely sculpted. Just so much to look at with this guy. On his back, you've got some pouches. There's even a storage area for his axes. And you know when Gimli says,
"And my axe."
I feel like he's overcompensating a little bit here because he has all the axes. He's got this long boy, he's got this double-headed axe. He also comes with this little axe and this little axe as well, which is stored on his side there. 4 axes, that's a lot. That's a lot of axes, a lot of chopping to be done, and I love that. They're all really nicely detailed and sculpted. There's a nice bit of wash going on those as well. He does also come with a removable helmet, so you can take the helmet off, so you can see his head sculpt just there. That's pretty awesome. Now, it is worth noting that they did obviously repackage this Gimli single-carded, and indeed some other multi-packs as well. Other Gimli figures come with or without capes. The inclusion or even omission of the helmet have more paint application on the helmet. This one's very muted with barely any paint application on it. Yeah, I'm not too sure what was going on with this release, but the colours are a bit muted on him, at least compared to other Gimlis. But he's still a really, really good figgy, in my opinion. Cool thing about this figure as well is it does have a play feature. So when you do squeeze his leg, he raises his axe or arm like so. So there's a nice chopping action there. Just going through the articulation, then he has a swivel head, but it's really, really tight, and also you can't really move it due to the fact that his beard is a solid piece of plastic. Now, while there is a play feature in this figgy, in the arm here, it's not hindered because it is on a ratchet joint, so you can still pose that. And again, does hinge in and out. It's got swivel biceps, swivel forearms. There's no swivel in this foot, but there is a swivel in this one. And that's all the articulation that this figgy has. And to be fair, I don't think it needs a lot more. Yes, it's always nice to have a bit more articulation, but I think they've captured Gimli extremely well with this figure. Just really, really awesome. I think it is one of my favourites from this pack. Not only because it's Gimli, but just because they've captured him so well in figgy form. And who doesn't love a good play feature?
Gentlemen, we do not stop till nightfall.
What about breakfast?
We've already had it.
We've had one, yes. What about second breakfast? Don't think he knows about second breakfast, Pip. What about elevensies? Luncheon, afternoon tea, dinner, supper. He knows about them, doesn't he?
I wouldn't count on it.
So here we have Merry and Pippin. Pretty sure I've got that right, because I always seem to get these two mixed up. These are very, very similar. They're not the same sculpt, obviously, but in terms of the overall aesthetic and articulation, and also because these are the best of buds, it was probably the best choice to do these two together. Now, if we just start off with Merry, you've got a really, really good likeness there to the actor that portrays him. Again, it's not spot on, but it's a relatively decent likeness. You've also got his yellow waistcoat, the green coat as well, brown trousers and the legs. Not too much detail, but if we just look at the back, of course, he's wearing this cloak and the hood's down on that, but he's also carrying a little bag as well, which is quite nice. He does come with a sword, and that is removable from his hand. That's the only accessory he really comes with. But there's no sheath to store that in. So that's fine, no biggie to that. Obviously you can't hold it in the other hand because it is scrunched up in a fist. Now, just going into the play feature, there is a button on the back, which is quite nicely concealed by the cape. I really do like the fact that the capes do conceal a lot of the play features. So what you can do is you can press the button. Yeah, there's a slashing or stabbing action there that a lot of these figures do feature, as you've seen. In terms of his articulation, he has a swivel, although it could be a ball joint in the head, but it is very, very tight due to the hair and sculpting of that. So it is really just a swivel more than anything. Ball joint in the shoulder, and again, it's the same in this arm, even though it's got that play feature. It does have the ratchet joint, so you can still move that. Swivel wrists. He has a swivel torso and swivel hips. Swivel top half of the feet as well. The legs are pre-posed. So yeah, there is a bit of a sweet spot when displaying this guy. And it's the same with Pippin, just because this has the same articulation and the same play feature.
You've never done a hard day's work.
Just take his cape off. He does have that sword slashing and stabbing action, which is quite cool. Except on this version, of course, he's wearing the hooded cape, and there's a little hole in there just so you can press that, which is kind of interesting. His sword is different to the one that Merry comes with. Yeah, there is additional accessory in the form of this little bag. That sits quite nicely around him. In terms of Pippin, he's wearing a scarf, a green jacket. We've also got the braces there. Again, a fairly good likeness to the actor that plays him. Not 100% again, but pretty good for the time that this was made. Legs as well, some nice sculpted detailing on the trousers. They did put the hair, in terms of paint application, on the feet, which is great. Of course, his hand is in a open position. Yeah, both of these figures definitely accompany each other really, really well. They did release these both together in a single carded release. And while the base bodies of those figures are the same as these ones, it's just the cloaks that are different. So Pippin's hood is actually down on that version, but both of them feature the Leaf of Lothlorien pin or brooch. These two actually don't have that, which is kind of weird to see. These two specific versions were actually repackaged with a Moria orc. So that's another way to get these if you didn't want to buy the full multi-figure pack. And that Moria orc does look really cool. But yeah, nonetheless, both these figures are pretty damn good. Again, not very articulated, very of the time, but there's such a charm to them. They're just a very nice representation of the characters that'll go on your shelf. And if that's what you're looking for, then these fit the bill.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There is evil there that does not sleep. And the great eye is ever watchful. It is a barren wasteland.
And here we have Denethor's favourite son, who's played by none other than Yorkshire Gem.
Do it for Yorkshire!
Sean Bean. What an awesome figure this one is. It's certainly flawed, of which we will get into as we look at him, but I really, really like this figure. He looks absolutely terrific and comes with some absolutely awesome accessories. But just having a look at that head sculpt, we've got a very dirty looking Sean Bean. Again, not the best likeness to the actor, but it's pretty decent again for the time. You've got some dirt smudging on his face, his long locks. You've got his armour and undersuit as well, which looks very regal. The guards as well look absolutely awesome. On his shoulders of the red fabric, or what's meant to be red fabric, you've got the gold stars painted on there, which is very accurate to how he appears in the film. The clasps on his outfit there as well, and the belt, just really, really cool. Just looking at the boots, they're covered in mud, which is really, really sweet. Likewise, the inner robes, really cool. And of course, he's got this big plastic cape. Although I do feel like a soft goods cape would have really benefited this figure particularly well. Just due to the fact that he's got that big bulky shield. And it's difficult to get that to sit nicely. Don't get me wrong, it looks okay on the figure. But from certain angles it does look a little bit out of place just because that cape is riding it up a bit. Really, really awesome stuff. In terms of his accessories, he comes with the Horn of Gondor. And this has some absolutely fantastic paint application going on it. Sort of mouthpiece there in silver, the gold. You've even got a string as well, which you can hold it with that. Then where the horn ends, that metallic detailing. And you can sort of pose him with it as if he's about to blow it. Not to toot his own horn, of course.
They have a cave troll.
He also comes with this sword. Mine's a little bit warped from being in the packaging. I'm sure a hot water bath may fix that, just to straighten it up a bit. And that can also be fitted into the sheath, which you can see situated here, and that is removable. It just slots in via this tab into the belt. Additionally as well, he does have that big cape, and it is removable, and also the shield as well, which is removable. It is attached via this harness, which goes all the way around the figure, and you can kind of itch that off once you've got the cape off. Some really nice brown weathering on the back of that. Then on the front there, some gold, silver, browns. Just really, really awesome. And it does have a handle on it, so the figure can hold it, which you can just see there. It is a bit of a pain to take it off, but really I'm happy with just having the figure looking like this. Now, like with a lot of these figures, he does indeed come with a play feature that, in terms of the button, is quite well concealed by the shield and the cape. I'll try and show you it. So as you press the button on the back, this arm lowers and the other arm raises. And also the head turns. So yeah, a very... yeah, the cape's dropped off at this point now as well. Yeah, a very weird sort of play gimmick. It's kind of quirky that it does that. I think I would have liked it even more if they included a bit of articulation as well. So if we just go into articulation, naturally because the play feature is built into that head and the arms, then there's no articulation in the head. The arms can be moved because they are on those ratchet joints, so you can sort of pose them a bit. There's just a hinge in the elbow. Now, I would have thought there would have been a swivel in there as well, but there isn't. There's no swivel just at the top, and it would have really benefited that, just so you could really move that arm out of position. And likewise, a swivel in the wrist. There's no swivel in the wrist there. So all you've got is a ball joint in the shoulder and a hinge there. So he is quite limited in terms of his posability in his arms, of which is a bit of a shame. He has swivel hips, hinged knees, and hinged ankles, although they are quite tight on mine. And they are kind of positioned a bit weirdly as well. I mean, this one is kind of inwards, so it doesn't sit flush on the ground depending how you're posing it. So yeah, there's definitely a real sweet spot in terms of how you can get this guy to stand when you've got it displayed. So yeah, don't get me wrong, this figure looks absolutely fantastic, but when you really start playing with it and posing it, it's a little bit bittersweet. Naturally, this figure did get released single carded. There's a couple of variants to that, but it is worth noting as well that he did receive the super articulation treatment. Overall detail and look-wise, it's one of the stronger figures in the pack, and it is always worth bearing in mind it is a figure certainly of its time. So at least for me and my mileage, I can kind of forgive the jankiness of it.
This is it. This is what? If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been. Come on, Sam.
And here we have the real hero of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Samwise Gamgee. It's safe to say, without this fella, Frodo would not have completed his task in taking the ring to Mordor.
Come on, Mr. Frodo. I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you.
This is a really, really good figure of Sam, a very good representation. Once again, the head sculpt is pretty good, particularly for the time. You've got some really good texture on the clothes as well. Of course, he's wearing a blue cape and he has that Lothlorien pin there as well. Trousers on his legs, and naturally with his hobbit feet, some paint application there to pick out some of that hair detailing. Not too much to really ring home about. In terms of the accessories that he comes with, his cape can be removed because it is similar to the one that comes with Frodo. That just attaches via a peg. And he also comes with this sword, which he holds quite nicely and he can hold in both hands. And additionally as well, he does have the sheath that the sword can be stored into, and the sheath can be removed from the leg of the figure just because it does have a peg, and you can store that on the figure's leg just there, like so. Now additionally as well, he does come with these little bags which are wrapped around him. You can remove those if you did wish, but yeah, you've got a little canteen there and the bag itself. In terms of articulation, he has a swivel in the head. There's probably a ball joint in there, but it is quite limited due to how the head has been sculpted. Ball jointed shoulders, hinges in the elbows, swivels in the wrists, swivel in the torso, swivel in the hips. though they don't really kick too far back. You got hinged in the knees and swivels in the ankles. So that's all the articulation that this figure comes with. That's a decent amount. Again, pretty good for the time. There's no play feature, of which is nice to see. This is just a really, really good representation of Sam. I do believe that this particular figure was repackaged with Frodo and the boat. So that's a good way if you did want to get this figure without buying this full set to get that. Yeah, this is a really, really nice representation of Sam. You can't have the Fellowship without Sam.
That fellow's done nothing but stare at you since we arrived.
Excuse me. That man in the corner. Who is he?
He's one of them rangers. Dangerous folk they are, one in the wild. What his right name is, I've never heard, but round here, he's known as Strider.
Strider.
And here we have Strider, or as he'll more commonly be known, Aragorn. And this figure is probably the jankiest in terms of head sculpt. Even for that time, it's not the best likeness to Vigo. It's there a little bit, but it could have certainly been better, I think, at the very least. His hair looking very unkept. He does kind of have a bit of a sweaty quality about him. For some reason, his 5 o'clock shadow runs even on his neck, which is pretty weird, but certainly a choice there. The undersuit as well, quite nicely sculpted. I mean, the whole body of the figure is quite nice. There's also a bit of weathering going on with this guy, just because at the bottom of the actual coat, you've got some brown mud-like splatter. There's even a bit of dry brushing picking out that on the undersuit as well. You can even see some of the stitch lines just on the back there, which is quite cool. Of course, he's got the sheath and the sword that can be stored in that. And there is quite a cool feature, which I will show you in a moment, that this figure includes. Again, you've got the boots. They're very, very heavily weathered. They look very, very muddy. You can even see the stitching on them as well. That's been sculpted. Just looks really, really cool. Very, very grungy. But like I said, the head sculpt is probably the weakest part of this figure. Not completely terrible, but certainly could have been better, I think, at the very least for that time. It is worth noting that this figure naturally was released single-carded, but featured a hooded cloak, and, depending on release, varying additional accessories. This does not. This figure just includes the sword, and that's the only accessory he comes with. Of course, it can fit inside the sheath, which is pretty cool. So just going into the play feature, I think this is really, really cool. So if you kind of pose the figure up in this way with the sword in the sheath does have quite a large opening in it. And this is to sort of create a sleight of hand trick, for lack of a better term, where if you squeeze the legs, the arm moves up and the sword draws out. Sometimes you can get it to work, depending on how quick you do it, and also the posing and other elements. It does vary on how well that works. But yeah, he's having a bit of trouble sticking that out. Let's just try that again, because I've got it to work quite effectively before. So there we go. And then he can start sword slashing away. That's pretty cool. I like that feature. A bit gimmicky, a bit silly. It's a toy at the end of the day. It's fun and doesn't really distract from the overall aesthetic of the figure itself. That being said, though, it does kind of draw away from the articulation. So in terms of his articulation, he does have a ball joint in the head, although it is quite loose for some reason on mine. A little bit limited due to the hair in terms of how far you can move it. Now, in terms of this arm, he has a ball joint in the shoulder, a hinge in the elbow. That's all the articulation in that arm. In terms of this arm, there is a hinge there, but due to the mechanism, there's a spring or something, so you can't really pose it. You can't even really turn the arm to display it the way you want, because that will probably break the mechanism, I would imagine, at the very least. You can swivel the arm, though there's a bit of give on that to give that rebound action when he draws the sword. The elbow can be bent, so there's a hinge there. And then there is a swivel in the arm, but again, there's a bit of give on that, so it flicks back into the original position. And that, of course, is for the sword slashing action feature. Moving further down, the legs do swivel a little bit. He does have hinged knees and hinged ankles. So yeah, this is probably one of the more limited figures in this set in terms of its posability and display option, but I still think it looks pretty great. It's a good representation of the character. I personally really like the sword slashing action of it. It surprisingly gets a pass from me. So in conclusion, this set is sick. Yes, some of the figures hit harder than some of the others. There's no denying that there was a lot of thought and attention put into them at the time. Play features are really a thing that are missed in figures nowadays, and that's kind of sad to see, especially when I've got all these figures in front of me and how much fun I had. Yes, they are a little bit a one and done gimmick, but ultimately the best thing about them is they don't detract from the figure's aesthetic at all. Really, for me as a collector, I'm just going to put them on a shelf. I want a representation of the Fellowship of the Ring. If that's what you're looking for, then you can't really go too wrong with this set. Yes, some of the articulation's a bit janky. Yes, some of them are a bit better at standing than others. But there's no denying that when you have them all together, they look absolutely fantastic. The prices of this on the second-hand market, depending which version you're looking for, can vary. But really, on a lucky day, I would say, to be as low as £25, because I've seen that happen, all the way up to the £100 price mark. I would say if you can get this for 60 quid, that's the sweet spot. That's running each individual figure at a very nice price point. Again, it's going to depend on your mileage. So, let me know what you think of this set in the comments down below. Did you pick this up back in the day? Do you have any memories of it? Sound off below. And well, this is me, Daniel East 1000, signing out. Thank you very much for watching.
Shabba.